Hello, everyone. Good morning. Today, Dev Diary for 18th December 2025. My name's Tat. I run VideoTranslatorAI, and what we do is we make meetings simpler. Practically, what does that mean? It means we have a voice-activated agentic system. So you say some stuff, you finish saying stuff, agents take over and do things. This can be used in solo or it can be used in a meeting. So two people are talking, at the end of it, you have a summary, but we knew this was an agenda, so that's what I'm going to do with the meeting. And I want the summary, the AI to pick out an agenda and make an agenda for me, or a to-do list, or tasks that different people have to do, that kind of thing. Happily, it also interprets. So if you're doing this with another person who speaks a different language, same process. You have the conversation with the other person, it transcribes, it translates, there's a voiceover, it acts as an interpreter, and then it summarizes and does things, and we can email it to you. And we're going to be adding more agents so you can do more things with it going forward. Uh, Dev Diary for the 18th of December 2025. I wanted to show you today, so presumably you are either a founder or you are trying to vibe code an app, and this is just sort of the insides of how this kind of thing works. Voice-activated agentic app, which my guess is many of you are keen on doing. What we're looking at, I'm going to show you onboarding. So what we did with onboarding. Up to now, we haven't really had onboarding. This is the first time we're going to have onboarding. So if you want to give it a shot, you should do that. This is a free trial. Then there's going to be a tour of the chat interface. I'm going to show you how we implemented that tour. In the previous video, I tried to do an English-Hindi interpretation. It didn't work so well. Now, hopefully it will, because I fixed up stuff on my side where the voiceover was not playing through the correct speakers. It was a whole thing. Then we're going to look at the coding implications, right? And I think that's actually really important as to how the onboarding and the tour was implemented within our app. This might be what you're interested in. Then I'm going to talk about Superadmin. How do you admin some of this stuff? And then we're going to look at the roadmap. Hopefully you like where this is going, and yeah, let's get into it. So this is our app. Obviously, I'm in localhost, so I'm in the development version of it just on my machine, and I'm going to show you what the onboarding looks like. So this is kind of what you will I'm having trouble today, aren't I? This is what you do if you're going to sign up. Now, normally there's going to be a one-time pin that you'll get emailed, and then you got to put the pin in, but this is dev, so none of that happens here. When you create the workspace, what we've got is this thing. Now, we have two apps. Our original offering was an enterprise offering that does video call translation and multilingual broadcasts and all this fancy stuff. But its core engine is not agentic, so it just became harder and harder to do things with. And the price point means that we can't really offer it to SMEs. This is more of an SME offering, and the agentic. I think this is the future. I think eventually, when this app has enough functionality, we'll just sunset the original video translation app, right? So that's where you can go in and translate a video and add voiceovers and create questionnaires in different languages and have video calls and broadcasts and do a whole heap of things, which you kind of can't in this one. But the architecture of this one is agentic, so it can do fundamentally a lot more. What it can do right now is you speak once, act everywhere. I'm not 100% on this line. I think what we're trying to say is when you have a meeting with someone, or if you're dictating notes to yourself for whatever reason, you want the AI to get a summary of what's happening, not necessarily a summary, get the gist of what's happening, and then go and do stuff, right? Uh, I When I work, I think of fat time and skinny time. I don't know if other people do this. This is what I think of. Fat time is sort of deep work where I'm writing code or I'm writing content or something like that, right? Like I'm thinking about something. Um, I'm building up all this context in my head and I'm doing stuff. I really don't want to be disturbed. That's kind of fat time. Skinny time is I'm sending emails. I'm making and receiving phone calls. I am talking to the team and giving updates and acting as a node for information moving around. Really important stuff, but just not things that flow in big contiguous chunks of time, right? That they're fairly small. There's lots of them. Also ripe for automation, right? And that's kind of what the aim is here. So we see this tool evolving into something that kind of closes the loop, I guess, between your fat time and your skinny time, because anything you have to do has a mix of fat time and skinny time, and you need to close the loop by finishing up the skinny time tasks quickly, and ideally you can automate these. Um, Put out a Medium post on this a little while ago, actually. Uh, might put the link in somewhere in the video. But yeah, this is what happens. So this looks like an onboarding thing. It tells you it's for one of many. So, we act on the transcript so you don't have to. This isn't exactly true. What's actually happening is we summarize, which actually I suppose that is acting on the transcript. Yeah, well, okay, it is. And multiple languages. The multiple languages is in part so we can internationalize very quickly and relatively easily. And if you can internationalize, you can also use that. Agentic workflows trigger from the transcript. That's kind of the big one. How it works, you record some stuff, it transcribes and summarizes, and workflows get triggered. 3-step process, give or take. This is now we're asking people a little bit about themselves so we can build better products. So summarize. Something like that, right? So we learn a little bit more about what our clients are and what they are trying to do. That is Grammarly, incidentally, doesn't like summarize. Anyways, that was the onboarding. And now that the onboarding is complete, we immediately switch into the tour. So this is the chat window. And so this opens it up and tells you what the chat window is, and then shows you the chat workspace. And again, next, these are live controls. This is going to change a bunch. I'll talk about that in the roadmap. Shows you transcribe versus interpret, shows you the language selector, tells you the voiceover toggle works, and then tells you how to start. You can turn this tour on and off. That's what that looks like. So what I'm going to do now is show you really quickly how this works, practically speaking. I'm going to jump to interpret and I'm going to type in Hindi. I tried to do this in my last video and it didn't work because it was set to the wrong speakers. So I'm going to try and make it work now and then we'll see how it goes. Hello, how are you?
नमस्ते, आप कैसे हैं?
मैं अच्छा हूँ, आप कैसे हैं?
I'm good. How are you?
So what I've done there is just a really simple thing. You probably heard it in the audio. It speaks it out. You would normally just use this on your phone. on your mobile phone and just turn on the interpreter and do your business. But here you can see the download summary piece, right? Because this is what's kind of important. And what you can do off the back of that is there won't be much of a summary on this one, but the idea is from the summary, you can set up prompts to have specific kinds of summaries. So if it was, I was speaking to a prospect recently, and we were talking about R&D. Here in Australia, if you're a startup or a founder, you can do a lot of R&D grants, which means money you spend on R&D, you get a return in your tax return to help ameliorate the costs of the R&D. For this, you obviously have to submit paperwork, and so you could set up an R&D summarizer here, right? So you have a meeting about someone with how the projects are going and what the R&D is doing and all that, creates a summary, creates a record, creates an audit trail. So what happens is when you put in for your R&D refund, you have lots of evidence in case you get audited. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you on this side of it. Where we're going to jump to now, so those are the three things I want to show you, and please feedback on these would be super appreciated. I'm going to show you a little bit about the coding implications, what that means, and what it looks like in Superadmin. So if you'll give me a second, I'll pop up my coding thing. Right, how are we doing this? So, and I spoke about the tenant misc spec and the user misc spec in the last video. So maybe check that out if you don't know what's going on. But we've got this config piece here. And so when a client registers, right, we call them tenants. So you've got an app, you've got tenants inside it. Inside the tenant, you've got lots of users. So I'm using the word client and tenant interchangeably, right? When you've got a tenant and they sign up, they register, at that point, at the point of registration, which you saw me do a little bit earlier, it creates a tenant, and within that tenant, it creates the admin user. So that's your first user. Okay, now let's think about this in terms of code. We actually want the same spec for tenant as for user, right? And so if you look at this, give me a second, I'll drag this one over so you guys can see it. They're both exactly the same. Now, why would you bother to have two things that are exactly the same? Now, I could have made this one file and extracted it out from there. That's probably the smart thing to do. But nonetheless, what it does is it allows us to flash the tenant with this spec and flash every user with the same spec. And so if there's a setting that we want to control on the tenant level, right? So every user in this client needs to have this setting. We can do it in the tenant spec. But then if we want the users to be something different, they can do it in their own, right? That's the purpose of it. So think about this in terms of, say, time zone, right? We're in Sydney. Let's say a client signs up here in Sydney. They're all going to be given, the code is going to look at the browser setting when they sign up, go, this is a person from Sydney. Awesome. I'm going to set them to Sydney AEST, Australian Standard Time. Awesome. No worries. Anyone within this tenant is automatically going to be given the same thing. But let's say that tenant, that client, has a staff member who is in Hong Kong, slightly different time zone, right? That staff member can change their own time zone to now be Hong Kong. But when they came in, we brought them in as Sydney. If they signed up on the website, this wouldn't be an issue. But let's say, the admin of the client in Sydney, who's in Sydney, gives them the new account, right? Signs them up. It automatically sets to Sydney. They come in and go, hang on, this doesn't look quite right. Okay, it's set to Sydney. I'm going to switch this to Hong Kong. Awesome, Bob's your uncle. The ability to have both settings on the client level, on the tenant level, and on the user level, essentially mirrored. That's what's happening here. In the case of onboarding, this is what it looks like. So you can see there's a show always, right? That was that little checkbox for, would you like to see this onboarding thing again? My guess is most people won't, so we set to a default to false. Is it the first login? Obviously, we want to show it on the first login, and that's cool. And then a bunch of this information that is going to be blank at the tenant level, but is going to be filled out at the client level, and then you can go away and do stuff with that, right? Maybe that's put them into different email boxes and, engage them in other ways, etc., etc. This is the default. Here you can see it says UTC, which is fine, but that gets overdone. That gets overwritten to whatever the browser thing is at the registration. The other thing I wanted to show you is chat tour. So you can see the chat tour is show always and is first login. This is pretty standard in terms of a tour. Was it the first time they came in, or do they just want to see it every time because they don't use it all that often and they need a reminder, and it's kind of convenient to have it there just as a refresher. That's what it is. I want to show you this in terms of an implication on the code. The other thing I wanted to show you on the code side is, let's have a look at chat. Now, chat has a lot of stuff and there's a lot of lines, but it's also really, really big. So it's about 3,000 something lines of code. So this is not great, and we're doing other things to sort of clean it up. But we now have chat controls, chat tour, and onboarding, and we've extracted out all of this. So what we're talking about obviously is this piece here is the chat controls, the overlay, the onboarding you saw and the tour you saw. This is the calendar. So because I've kept it on, you'll see the tour again. So this is the tour, right? I'm just going to skip it for the moment, but that's what you're looking at. So when you look at the code, if we had controls, overlay, and onboarding all inside chat, that becomes a lot bigger. And it's already 3,000 lines, and that's not great. We think chat's going to break up a lot more. We're going to split it up more, because even at 3,000 lines is way too big and hard to understand. And then we're probably going to go with a factory model. So effects and references and all of that sits inside chat, things update, but the actual UI pieces are broken down and go further below. So I just wanted to show you those two things in the code, and hopefully that was kind of helpful. I mean, we have kind of gone the quick and dirty way of just rolling a quick overlay system on our own. I know there's React libraries that can do it, and you can send them a nice piece of JSON and they'll do all that stuff. That seemed like a bit of overkill. We probably will do that eventually, or at least change it into JSON instead of just hard coding it into, say, the tour overlay, whatever. So here you can actually see, if we look at onboarding, you can actually see the text, right? Quick tour, blah, blah, blah. Create a capture full notes, that kind of thing. Similarly with, oh, maybe it isn't here. Maybe it's actually in the chat. Yeah. I'd be keen to know how you guys are doing it, because there's a number of different ways you can do it with this, and I'm sure it'll mutate over time and get better. Right now it doesn't have any analytics, which is something. Who fell off the tour? Who stayed on the tour? Why did they use the tour? What were they looking to get out of it? Do we need to do more? That kind of thing. But yeah, that's what the tour looks like now. What I'd like to show you now is Superadmin implications. Sorry. Is Superadmin implications. And then we'll go to the roadmap that you can see coming forward. So I'm going to log out of here for a moment and just that password and user don't exist in prod, in case you're curious. It's just my dev environment. I've shown you a little bit of Superadmin in the past, and I know I keep saying that we'll do a thing, but we will do a full guide of Superadmin. One of the things we do, which I think is kind of cute, is we name clients or we name tenants of an emotion and a bit of Australian flora and fauna. So this one is kind acacia. Anyways, we were talking about tenant misspec, and I know it looks like ass, but this is what it looks like in the background. So you can see that this tenant has show the onboarding wizard on onboarding. This is the show always, basically, which we don't want for the onboarding wizard. We just want it showed once, and then mark as first login. So show it on the first login for every user. These are obviously empty because this is what the user fills out. And with the chat tour, always show the tour and show on first chat visit. There was a tiny bug where it was showing it twice because both of them were checked. And I fixed that up. So by the time this goes into production, that probably won't happen anymore. Similarly, within members, this is the user. Obviously, I have role admin. My core language is English. We haven't added a lot of internationalization yet. I've put in the bare bones for it. So just Spanish at the moment, but we'll do videos on that when that happens. Basically the same thing. Again, ugly as sin, but allows Superadmin to come in and make changes here. At the moment, the currency is also just USD, so you're always going to be paying in USD. We hope to change that in the future. Yeah, and you can see here there's actually a the JSON object itself. Also did something very, very cool in that if you have a look at our tenants, we have the ability to add all these. So I wouldn't recommend you do this for any functionality in your own app, right? Like in many ways, it's a terrible idea. But for UI specific things only, right? Don't do it for other stuff. In your own app for UI specific things only, we do this kind of thing. So we're able to change the tenant miss settings and the user miss settings really quickly. What this allows us to do is basically in like a 2-day turnaround, we can change how the UI works, right? The reason we're not doing this as database entries and then doing a migration is because it'll probably keep changing over time. And this is a nice and somewhat dirty way to do it. And if you have like a bajillion users, don't do this. But if you're trying to build your first app or a starting app, it's just a convenient way to make things happen. So I've got these settings. I can update them. I can make a change. I can upgrade the settings if I need to, that kind of thing. We've also got an upgrade all button, which bulk upgrades it, but that's a bit dicey to do. I wonder why that's popping out of the screen. I'm not entirely sure. I should look into that because that should definitely not be that far down. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration of what's happening on our side. What needs to happen in the future? So where are we going with this? What can you expect to see if you're a client, if you're a prospect? You know, where are we going with this, right? Because obviously it does one or two things, and I think it does them reasonably well. There's room for improvement, obviously, but it does them reasonably well. Where are we going? So we're doing quite a lot of work on the marketing and sales pieces. One of the easiest ways to improve your product is to eat your own dog food. And we found that the tools we had didn't really meet our needs, and it was just messy and complicated. And so because our system is agentic, we are adding simple marketing automations within the system. Once they're kind of stable, we'll probably put them out so you can use them also. But that's what's happening. Same thing's happening with sales, right? Really simple you're a founder, you're a app design person, you have a small app, how do you do sales, that kind of stuff. Um, with both marketing and sales, we don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. We're going to be putting stuff out, see how it goes, and it should be interesting at the very least. I do need to improve stuff on audit. There's a lot of conversations and runs and orchestrations and all that are covered and happen, but simpler things, right? Who logged in, who logged out, who created new users, that stuff is there. So we really need to bring that in. So that's not so much for admin users, but more for like compliance, folks like that, who did what, and the ability to see things that happen within the organization. We do need to redo chat. That's kind of happening at the moment. Want to break it up a little bit. Obviously, 3,000 line files are not what you want in your product. It's a huge pain in the bum. What's happening at the moment? So, because it's an agentic system, we can create agents, and we do use these internally, go away and get these 10 RSS feeds and come back with a bunch of articles for me to look at for creating content, right? That's an agentic, go find one agent goes away and gets the 10 feeds, the second agent goes away and with each feed, each link that it has goes away and creates a summary and then maybe goes, yes, no, this is good for marketing, maybe you should look at it, that kind of thing, right? We do think this is where agents are going, where they help you do stuff off the back of voice. Okay. But if you look at how our transcription and interpretation work, they're kind of special cases and don't really flow within the orchestration. Now, there's a good reason for this, and the reason we've done that is it's not entirely obvious to us whether what you want is a transcription and then do things off it, or it's an agent where this is happening while you're speaking, right? My guess is it's going to be a bit of both, because at the moment you're pressing buttons to tell the agent what to do, but there's nothing stopping us from making it a push-to-talk system, right? Where you click a button, you say some stuff. So, you talk to the agent and you're like, okay, I need to set up a meeting with so-and-so. And they're like, all right, no problem. I've got that set up. I'll send them a meeting invite. You're like, yeah, sweet. And then during the meeting, your agent is giving you notes while you're speaking to them on a call or on a video call, right? We can already do the video call on our other app. We'll bring that functionality in pretty soon. But yeah. So stuff like that, right? We need to polish this up and think. If you have any great ideas or use cases, comment, like, subscribe, that kind of thing. We're also going to be bringing the video translation piece into this because we think it's much nicer to do this within an agentic system, which currently we aren't able to do. Our current approach is it happens in a traditional video editing UI type thing. Asset support, right? So at the moment, we don't record any of the conversations. We summarize them. We have had requests for that. But if you look at the marketing, for instance, I've got a bit of content. I want the agent to go away and post it in lots of different places, but it should also use this PDF for LinkedIn because that becomes a carousel. This image in this scale for Twitter or X, that kind of stuff. Those are all assets. So we need better asset support. So those are kind of things that are coming in the pipeline. And we're excited to be sharing that stuff with you as we go. But that's kind of it for me. Thank you so much. Hopefully I'll get another video out next couple of days, but then probably take a few days off for Christmas. Have a great holiday season and Happy New Year. And there'll probably be more videos in the middle, but if you don't see me, have a good break, and I will see you on the other side of the new year. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.